Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well on this Wednesday morning. We're going to continue our daily devotional. We're going to look at Psalm chapter 37, and it's a great Psalm of David. It's a little bit longer, so I'm probably going to take a couple of days to go through this one. And in this psalm, we have probably two of the most quoted little phrases in Scripture. And it's an interesting psalm because it's written later in David's life. He referenced that in the text itself. And he could have been speaking to Solomon and talking about what he needs to do to be a good king, and gives him sound advice. And as he's talking through it, he kind of broaches the subject of this kind of eternal question for those of us that are believers. It's why do the wicked sometimes prosper? And sometimes the people who are supposed to be the righteousness of Christ seem to suffer or not to walk in the fullness of the promises of God. Some people oversimplify it. The philosophy behind it all is really interesting. If you are an atheist or an agnostic, you don't have to wrestle with the problem or the philosophy because you don't use terms like righteousness or wickedness. You just don't have to enter into that realm. But the reality is for us, the backdrop for this psalm is painted by the fact that God is holy and righteous and that we aren't. And he's talking about covenant Israel, and I think David's giving instruction for generations to come of God's covenant people, and in terms of the covenant. So God owned the land of Israel. It was his promised land. He allowed his children to come in, and if they walked in obedience, they could enjoy the fullness of the land. The milk and honey would flow, and it would be a great place to live. But if they walked into rebellion and sin, then judgment would come. And this concept in the new covenant is interesting because in the old covenant, it was all about, here's the covenant that God made. You agreed to the covenant. You need to live up to the covenant. And they failed miserably all the time. And sometimes we think of the God of the old covenant as this mean, angry God. Well, he was just living according to the covenant. And the thing is that he still exemplified amazing grace to his people who continued to walk in rebellion. And we see the grace of God through the old covenant. So David, from his perspective, he's trying to teach generations to come what he's experienced, that when he followed the Lord and had his focus on him, walked in obedience, everything went well. And when he walked in disobedience, he paid the price. And so it's a lesson for us. So in this psalm, he kind of gives us 4 encouraging assurances through it. The first one he talks about is that the Lord can be trusted. All right. Verses 1 through 11 tells us to not fret, not worry in verses 1 through 2. Don't get caught up in the situation or the circumstances you're in, which is applicable to us right now. He tells us to trust in the Lord in verse 3. No matter what's going on, to trust the Lord. Don't give up. Don't bail out, but stay faithful. In verse 4, he talks about how we need to learn to delight in the Lord. Verse 5 and 6, commit our ways to the Lord. And then in verse 7 through 11, to learn how to rest in the Lord. And I think this season is kind of teaching us that a little bit. And then he talks about the next section, verses 12 through 20, that the Lord understands our situation. And I think this is so apropos for us right now because people are so concerned about jobs and everything else, but we have to come to a place where we learn that we need to trust the Lord because he understands what we're going through and he's going to work on our behalf. So let's go look at the text real quick. He starts off and he says, don't fret because of evil men or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like the green plants, they will soon die. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy pure safety. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. That verse sound familiar? So David had come to a place to where he said, if I go all in with the Lord and I delight myself in him. So that word delight, it's not a word that we use real often in our vernacular. But it's a powerful word, right? Because if you're going to delight in something, it means that you find and draw joy from that because you're all in with it. And so David is trying to establish that if the people of God would go all in with him, walk in this covenant relationship, it says that he would give them the desires of their heart. And so you hear people quote this verse all the time, and it just kind of flows off their tongue. But David, in the context of what he's saying, he says, learn how to delight yourself in the Lord, all right? But he starts off, he says, trust in the Lord, do good, and dwell in the land and enjoy pure safety. So there's always caveats, right? So we surrender completely to the Lord, then we experience it. And he says, commit your ways to the Lord, trust in him. And he will do this. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn. Your justice, the justice of your cause, will shine like noonday. Verse 7, I like this. Be still before the Lord. Wait patiently for him. Don't fret when men succeed in their ways, when they carry off their wicked schemes. We need to learn to trust in the Lord, especially in this season when we're at home, kind of sequestered. Refrain from anger. Turn from your wrath. Don't fret. It only leads to evil. For evil men will be cut off, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land. A little while, the wicked will be no more. Though you look for them, they will not be found, but the meek will inherit the land and enjoy great peace. All right, so I'm out of time. There's a lot more in this. We're going to come back to it tomorrow. So read through this psalm. I mean, there's so much more, and there's another very famous portion of scripture in it. But know this, the Lord loves you today, and press into him. Let him do a work in your heart in this season. Spend some time in his word today. Spend some time in prayer. Don't let your mind just run crazy, but get your focus back on him, because that's what David had the ability to do. No matter what was going on, he always brought his focus back to his walk with the Lord, and God brought him through every situation. He'll do the same for you. All right? Lord bless you. We'll talk to you tomorrow.